Welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, the podcast about disease prevention and health promotion from the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences.
I'm Dr. Leigh Frame, Director of the Integrative Medicine Programs, Executive Director of the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, and an Associate Professor in the Departments of Clinical Research and Leadership and Physician Assistant Studies here at GW.
And I'm Dr. Misha Kogan, Medical Director of GW Center for Integrative Medicine and Associate Professor of Medicine here at GW.
And I'm Janette Rodrigues, the office's Administrative Director. This is the podcast 100th episode. I still can't believe that.
It is shocking, isn't it?
Isn't it? We are coming full circle with today's guest, who is Dr. John Pan, or as we like to call him, the Father of Integrative Medicine here at GW. He is the office's founding medical director and the founder of the GW Center for Integrative Medicine.
Let me correct you. He's a grandfather now.
Well, exactly. I'm going to be great-grandfather soon.
Congratulations.
That's right.
That's wonderful. Congratulations and welcome, John.
Welcome, John.
So happy to be here, all the way in Florida.
That we're having Florida-like weather today.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Well, John, I can't believe that when we started this in 2018 that we would still be going and still be going strong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Leigh and Misha probably know a little more about the lifespan of healthcare podcasts than I do, but we have something to be proud of, y'all.
Agreed.
So, John, when I approached you about doing a podcast, what did you think?
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's great. I mean, and for me, I mean, it dates back beyond 2016. It's all the way to 1998. So history went back a long way.
Leigh, do you want to tell them why 1998 was so important?
Oh, absolutely. That's when the Center for Integrative Medicine was founded, which is why we call John the Father of Integrative Medicine at GW, because he started it all. None of us would be here without him.
I'm so glad you're all there.
Well, we're glad we're here too.
Back in 98, I don't think that any of us had any clue that we will be involved, except for John, obviously.
That's true.
Oh, I have no clue either.
So what was the world like in terms of integrative medicine back in 98? Were people open to this concept, excited about this concept, or were you having more of an uphill battle?
Well, it was pretty interesting. At that time, I had been in private practice for the longest time, and then a couple of years before that, I just went over to become full time at GW. And I still remember, I mean, I guess it goes back to my cultural roots. I'm Chinese, and I've always been fascinated with Chinese medicine, and I took a deeper dive into that and found that, in Chinese medicine, the approach is really listening to the story of the patient and then focusing on the root cause of the issue rather than just identifying the disease and treating the disease. So I talked about it a lot in the doctor's lunchroom, talking to whoever is willing to listen. And then eventually the chair of the Department of Medicine, so why don't we start a center? And there it goes. And I had the support of the then Vice President, Dr. Weingold, and they allowed me to start at that time, the Center for Integrative Medicine. It was amazing.
And it's exactly 25 years since
Yeah.
the center was found. So it's not only 100th podcast, but it's also a quarter of century of the center. So it's a double important moment in time. Those first couple of years, I always wondered, none of us were there when you actually started seeing patients. First the patients were in MFA, and then you guys moved out to to the location on New Hampshire. So how were those years? I mean, when things were nobody knew anything. I mean, you guys were starting from scratch. There was, at least now you can. There's so many centers doing this. Back then, it was just you.
Yeah, in those days, I think we started as in the psychiatry clinic. So they were willing to give up 2 exams room, and we shared the front desk with the Department of Psychiatry. And those rooms were, we don't have any windows, was dark, was a miserable
Not
place.
a healing environment.
But the
That tells
lesson
you
I
something about
yeah,
psychiatry department.
well, anyway, the lesson I learned is that take anything that they're willing to give you.
Yeah.
Mm. Right. You don't necessarily have to shoot for the moon. Just get something going.
Just start, get it started, and that was the key. And no, yeah. So, well, the advantage is that nobody knows what was going on. I can just make it up, and that's whatever I make up. It is what it is. But the interesting thing is that it's a common path that many different individuals all come to travel on. It's definitely not a unique idea. At that time, as I start to go to different conferences and find out there are many different people and different all around the country really talking the same talk. So that's the power of the concept. It's
Hmm.
not a unique idea. It's not an individual that's doing this. It's really a movement. It's a recognition of the value of what we do.
So, John, was one of those early conferences you went to, was that the academic consortium?
That was one of them. Yeah, that was started. I think maybe about the same time that we got started. We joined a year or two later.
All three of you have been active in the consortium in different ways and forms. Leigh or Misha, do you want to take sort of explain to our listeners what the academic consortium is and does, and the fact that now how many members do they have now?
About 76 institutions globally,
Yeah,
which is incredible because it started with what, 4, John?
Started with 4, yes, and then when we joined, it became 7 or something, and
I think it
then
was 9. I think
9. Yeah,
I think
9.
CIM joined in, was it 2003,
Yeah,
2002?
something like
Yeah,
that.
it was one of the
Yeah.
first waves.
Yeah, so this organization, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's sort of the academic home of integrative medicine and health, where people from universities all across the world get together to try and, share science, share best practices, share struggles, like, how do you get your program started? These are not easy things. And it's to be honest, it's like one of the most fantastic places that I've ever been. And I hear this from my students too. It's just a welcoming environment of people who really want to do good work. They're passionate about what they do. They also walk the walk, right? Like we have healthy food at this event. We have we have time to meditate at this event. And because of that, there's just this community that there's nothing else like it, in my opinion. And I've been to many, many different kinds of academic conferences. So it's a really wonderful place. And I've had students who've they haven't been able to get off on their clerkship, so they're like flying in and flying out the same day, but yet they still told me, I felt recharged after my day here. And I'm like, I can't believe that. You had a crazy day, but just the time that they were there, they felt recharged. So that's my take on the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health.
And Dr. Frame is not lying about the food because she's a chair of this year's conference. She knows what she's talking about.
It's true. I'm making sure it's extra good.
But
always.
it's interesting then when I joined. I think the first conference I went was 2008 or 2009, and I remember it was like a pretty small. I mean, there were less than 100 people there, and it was extremely intimate. And despite the fact that now some of the conferences are like 500, 700 people, there's still some of this aspect of intimacy that was preserved, which I find amazing. As you would think that when a conference gets this big, like it becomes much less personal, but it's not. It's there's still this leaders who would talk to students, and there's a very strong attempt at making students very comfortable, and not just comfortable, but welcoming them and having them spend time with the leaders. It's quite an unusual. So if you're a student listening to this, come. I think
Yeah,
that's what we're trying
you
to
should
say.
go to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very special place, including giving a lot of opportunities for students to attend, like allowing them to volunteer and help so they can have free registration. Really trying to lower the barriers for everyone to participate, and including, the annual meeting. You don't have to be in a member institution, right? So if you aren't a member institution, you can still come. Of course, it costs a little bit more because you don't have that membership discount, but we're still welcoming. So if you aren't at an academic center, but you're interested in learning more about this, you would be able to attend.
Well, one of the reasons why I'm a fan of these conferences is because often uh, Lee or Misha will meet somebody or hear somebody, and the next
Yeah,
thing I know, I'm getting an email about we need to have this person on the
that is true. We will probably come home with a handful.
podcast. So, of the guests we've had or the episodes we've had, which ones have been your favorites as the longtime co-hosts of this podcast?
It's like picking between your children.
Well, we can say that this year's Academic Consortium Conference, one of the keynotes is organized by the head of the NAS Arts and Science program,
The
Dr.
National Academy of
Kalasic,
Science.
National Academies of Sciences. So he's going to be leading the panel that will discuss the sort of interlink between arts and sciences and medicine with some really fascinating people who are doing amazing work. And Janet, remember, we did this podcast about the engagement of NAS in a sort of bridging this gap between art sciences and medicine, which I think is a very important work. I think we sometimes in integrative medicine get a little too wrapped up in a biochemistry, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great, but we forget some of these human aspects, and so this is something that stood out to me when you asked this, Jan.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about doing the podcast is we've been able to explore topics like art therapy and science. We've done at least, I think,
Hmm.
two, possibly even three, but we've had so many different topics. We've covered so many different aspects of nutrition, the gut microbiome,
Those are obviously
yoga,
my favorite.
energy work, of course.
But our listeners already knew that.
Yes. I mean, how to live in a toxic world.
Mm,
I mean, some of the authors that we've been able to have on, I always tell people just listen to our podcasts.
I do too. We were both, Misha and myself were giving a talk yesterday at Georgetown University separately, separate talks. And of course, I plug the podcast because it's a way for the students to get free information, right? They could just be walking to class and learning. And
Mhm.
we try to keep it short, which I think, to be honest, a lot of other podcasts do not, right? Some of my podcasts are getting out of hand. They're like 3 hours long. And I'm like, I can't do that. So you, the listeners, we're doing this for you.
Oh, so if that's the comparison, then yes, we're keeping it bright and tight. Although I don't know, Misha lately has been going long.
Lately, is that the word lately there strikes me as interesting.
But you know why it's okay? Because even though we'll go over our 30-minute, that's our self-imposed limit, folks. It's usually 30. Um, it's worth it because we go where the conversation takes us, and
Right.
when you have Misha and Lee co-hosting, it's going to take you some interesting and educational places.
And sometimes we even like end up working during the podcast. We basically, when we were talking about dolphins and
That's exactly what I
C15,
was thinking of too.
yeah, we ended up realizing that while we're having podcasts, that we're sitting on tons of data that we should do research on. So it's a working event for us.
So if you haven't listened to that one, that is one of my favorite podcasts. It's the one about Navy SEAL dolphins. I forget the title. It's like, what do dolphins have to do with aging? Is that the title, Janet?
Something like that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you can't miss that one. It's absolutely fascinating.
So what was the name of the company? Fat something?
Fatty 15,
Maybe
because
15.
the fatty acid is C15.
So tell folks a little bit about why it blew your minds.
Well, it's one of those there's a lot of these in science, like really fascinating discovery stories. Like penicillin, like if you just leave your bread out and it gets moldy and it somehow ends up on your culture and you see that it's fighting off the bacterial cultures, like that's unbelievable. That's how we discovered penicillin. This is not dissimilar, right? You have a veterinarian whose her sole job was really to take care of these Navy SEAL dolphins. That's right, dolphins that are Navy SEALs. That is I said that correctly. And because they're so well cared for, they live well beyond what dolphins in the wild live. And so she started seeing that they were experiencing a lot of the same conditions that we're experiencing now: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, loss of cognition, sort of the chronic diseases and the diseases that we think of as being part of modern aging. And she was like, well, what could we do to reverse this? And she was just studying how some of the dolphins did better, some of them did worse. And what she found in this population was this C15 fatty acid was one of the main drivers. And as long as they were able to get their sort of natural diet of whole fish, they got enough C15 and the aging wasn't as big of a deal. And so I feel like this is kind of a microcosm of what we're doing with human beings too, right? We're taking ourselves out of our natural environment. We don't have exposure to sunlight and nature, and we don't have enough physical activity or a healthy diet. And now we're seeing a lot of these diseases are just rampant in our population. And if we could get back in at least towards the direction of something that's more the way the human body evolved, we're more likely to have better long-term outcomes.
John, what's your favorite podcast?
Uh,
Putting you on a spot.
yeah, you're putting me on the spot. I haven't been actively engaged.
You are retired. That's fair.
All
We'll
right,
give you
fair
a
enough.
pass.
My days are full. So the first one and the last one, the first and the hundredth would be my
Are your favorite.
favorite.
That's great.
Well, John, thank you for returning to help us celebrate this 100th podcast.
Well, thank you for your work. I was saying earlier, I'm happy to have inspired this and have not had to do any work for this.
That sounds good. We're going to get to that point someday.
Well, you're still involved. You're still
That's true.
involved. I mean, we ask you periodically for different advice to connect to some people. I mean, we periodically reach out. You're still a member of this team.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So, since we do have you and you have all this wealth of wisdom, are there any sort of, I don't know, really important time points in your mind that stand out in terms of the progression of integrative medicine at GW, but also kind of nationally as we're starting to see, like, there's a center at NIH that's probably an important landmark. Are there anything that stands out to you that we should highlight?
Uh, wow, I haven't really given it a lot of thought, uh, but it's really sort of a gradual progress, uh, and it's always, to me, has the whole practice about integrative medicine. The driver is really from the consumer, from the patients,
Hmm.
because as far as I'm concerned, our academic center, even to this day, I think, I'm afraid we're only being tolerated,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
rather see an actively engaged effort to push it, to promote it. to nurture it, really to support it as a core discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I'm kind of worried about is that actually, as it becomes more incorporated, it may become another silo of
Yes,
academic medicine.
that's my
Mhm.
biggest fear, to be honest.
And and that is something that we really have to be wary of.
Yeah, agreed. We can't just be over here in our own little group being integrative. That it sort of is against the definition of integrative, right? But also, the majority of healthcare is not being conducted by clinicians that are trained in integrative medicine. So we really need to be working with the other clinicians and helping them to understand how this approach can help them and their patients.
And, that's really one of the reasons why this podcast exists,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
is to try and reach those other clinicians in their silos to sort of draw them out. Anyway, y'all, this has been wonderful. Thank you for coming together and making time for this. This is the GW Integrative Medicine podcast from the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health.
I'm Dr. Leigh Frame.
And I'm Dr. Misha Kogan.
And I'm Janette Rodrigues. Thanks
Thanks
for
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 listening.
listening.
The Office of Integrative Medicine and Health produces the GW Integrative Medicine podcast with funds from your donations. Your generosity allows us to raise awareness of the benefits of integrating whole person care, including evidence-based complementary therapies, into healthcare broadly. Help us continue to grow the podcast by making a tax-deductible donation on our website, smhs.gwu.edu/OIMH. Click the Give Now button on the left. While you're there, sign up for our free monthly newsletter for even more evidence-based content, including free webinars.